So baby brine shrimp, we are constantly told, is the best source of protein or the best food for your fry. Really? Is that really the case? By the end of this video, you will have an opinion on that. I've got mine, but you will have one too. Hello everybody and welcome to not another brine shrimp video. It's called that because I'm not going to sit here today and say, oh, they're a great source of protein for your fish, and then just hack up some old water bottle and make some godforsaken, noisy, bubbling, salt leaching home hatchery. Okay, that's not going to happen today. What we are going to look at today is the benefits of Artemia, that's what they're actually called, where they come from, and some of the theories, let's just say myths, surrounding them in the hobby. Because when you speak to the people whose billion-dollar company actually rely on being able to provide consistent, good products, I find that information a lot more likely to be reliable than just some hobbyist. And I understand that I am just some hobbyist. So do your own research off the back of this and look into what I'm telling you. If that sounds like that's for you, get a coffee. This is probably not going to be that quick. You might know them as a different name. They go by brine shrimp, Artemia, which is the actual correct name, Norplii, which is the correct name for baby brine shrimp. You may have heard them called baby brine shrimp. You might have heard them called fairy shrimp. You might have heard them called sea monkeys. Now, sea monkeys, whilst they look like brine shrimp, are not a species of brine shrimp. They're a hybrid of many, and sea monkeys is just a brand name. But essentially, they are just a very small, saline-loving, saltwater-loving crustacean.
They are found everywhere, from the shores of Central West America to the landlocked waters of Tibet.
So on that map, you can see the red areas. They denote high densities of a wild population. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only places they are found, but you find the densest population around the warmer, the more central band around the globe. You don't need to go that far to get them though. They should be available in most good fish shops. I'm yet to find one that doesn't have one. You can buy them as frozen adults, Artemia. You can buy them as live adults, Artemia. Live Norplii, the baby brine shrimp, they're much harder to buy. You might be able to get them from events. I know they're generally available at our event, Fish Fate. But to obtain these, you normally get them as eggs. Cysts is what they're really called, but that's kind of gross. So most people just stick with eggs. So yes, eggs, that's where they come from. Now, it's important before you rush out and go and buy your eggs that you pay attention really to the rest of this video, because there are differences. How often is it we find one species in the entire globe? No, there are several species of Artemia. They have different properties. I know, wormholes breaking open, all right? So we got different properties of different species. When you buy them, you need to have what species you are buying in mind and what you intend to use them for. They can generally be identified on location. So around the globe, normally there was 1 to 2 naturally occurring species in each sort of location. Humans came along, meddled with that, because these are wicked little things. We can pretty much do what we want with them, and we've moved them around. So when you are buying the eggs, you'll quite often see the location, and that might be Great Salt Lakes, that might be Utah, that might be San Fran Bay, it could be Tibet, and they generally have different. Those two have very, very differing species, hugely different. And the most popular come from San Francisco Bay and Tibet. These two, which we'll get into later, are probably the most used in the industry and have got the most use for you. People panic when theirs don't look like their friends. Just like a teenager discovering their own body, it's nothing to worry about. You most likely just have a different species. Now, the panic is not so prevalent as it used to be, because there was a bit of a thing when I first got into the hobby a long time ago. Scams. You would go and buy brine shrimp cysts or artemia cysts, and you'd be sold a little vial of sand because you didn't know any better. Well, let's go and have a look. So unfortunately, the iPhone isn't really picking up the color difference that I can see with my naked eye. That's the only bit of me that is naked. On the left-hand side is a lighter gray tan color. The right-hand side, a much darker, deeper red, muddier color. Left is Utah's Artemia franciscana, and right is Artemia tibetan. The left-hand side are slightly smaller, and this is why you would use franciscana over the Tibetans. The Tibetans are generally a little bit cheaper to buy, but the usability, well, I was going to say it's less. Franciscana are a little bit more expensive because they're smaller. They're more appropriate for feeding to fry faster. The Tibetans, slightly better for feeding juvenile to adulthood fish. So we have both because baby pseudomoguls need the one on the left after a period of paramecium, and the adults much easier to condition on the Tibetans on the right because they're a little bit larger. Right, guys, whilst we look at these here, these are Tibetanias. Let's have a quick chat about where some of the others come from. Parthenogenetica, they come from China and also a place, Margarita in Italy. You can get Persimilis, who come from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Artemia salina come from Tunisia. Artemia sinica come from Guangcheng in China. There's obviously the Tibetanias, which you're looking at now, and the Armenias, who come from Iran. Now, franciscana, if you ever see AF430, they are franciscana. The billion-dollar food fish industry loves these so much, they have called them AF430. They come from San Bay, Sao Paulo in USA, Macau in Brazil, Shark Bay in Australia, Bahia, Puerto Rico. They also come from Colombia and Canada as well, but they're very, very rarely seen because they're not there in massive numbers compared to the other locations. So just having seen the Norplii tibetana, this is a graph of their life cycle. You can see at the top there with dormant cysts, and it goes clockwise all the way around to the adults. But then you've got this little loop under, like a joker lab, active young. And that's because they can also be live bearers. We don't ever really notice that unless you're trying to keep a culture going yourself. But because they just always come in tins looking like sand, we just sort of expect that they only lay eggs. But it is a nice, interesting touch. You keep them in the right environment, they don't need to be in a cyst. How should you store them? Okay, first example, you've been to your LFS, you've bought some live Artemia. They're in these little bags. You can keep those in the fridge for 4 or 5 days, maybe push it to a week, but do me a favor, if the bag dies, don't feed it to your fish. For the sake of £1.50, maybe £2, don't do it. And I know if you haven't already had the advice, you will get the advice at some point from somebody who says, well, I do it all the time, I've never had a problem. Well, that's great, Bruce. I'm going to never have the problem by never introducing the risk. Just don't do it. If you want to keep them longer term, you can freeze them. Remove as much water as you can first. Don't freeze them in the bag. Open the bag, maybe strain them out, put them in some little ice cubes, bang them in the freezer. They'll last months. Don't let them defrost and then refreeze it. Don't do that with any frozen food. If you're talking about cysts, you buy in a container of eggs. A lot of people will tell you must keep them in the dark. You must keep them in the fridge, or you must keep them in the freezer. I think really the only thing that you must do is keep them dry. I have, over the years, kept them in this room, which has a temperature of about 27 degrees Celsius. Don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. Nobody cares. No, I'm not counting the individual cysts to see if I had exactly the same hatch rate, but I'm not doing that anyway. So there'd be no reference point. Plus, well, I have some sort of life. Do you need to keep them in the fridge? I think maybe it helps, but I think it becomes a point of, do you believe that they've been kept in that environment in storage before they were sold to you? Because if they haven't, I really don't see the point in doing that yourself. I know Mr. McElroy, he goes through a lot of effort and expense to make sure that the brine shrimp that they supply to their customers is kept in sub-zero temperatures from the moment it leaves the factory to when it leaves their warehouse en route to you. Sub-zero. It's crazy that you can freeze these things, because freezing generally explodes cell walls. You know, as a liquid expands when it's frozen, it breaks the cell wall. Interestingly enough, if you're struggling to get your zucchini, broccoli, whatever to sink in your tank, instead of just jabbing forks in it, put it in the freezer overnight. The water in each cell will expand, break the cells, and then when you put it in, it should just sink. We do it all the time. So no, I don't believe you have to keep it in the freezer. I don't believe you even have to keep it in the fridge. We've only recently started bothering to keep them in the fridge. Until then, for the last 18 years, they have been in the room with the tanks. Sometimes in the light, sometimes not. Been away on holiday and left them in the light. Yeah, notice any difference, and that was 10 days of not being in the dark. So I think you can store them. I think that there probably are best practices, but unless you know how they've been stored prior to you, I don't think it matters. And obviously, if you buy the frozen packs, you keep those in the oven. So cryptobiosis sounds awesome, right? And it kind of is, because cryptobiosis, what it is the state that the cyst enters. It slows its metabolism down so much there's barely any signs of life. How incredible is that? You can put these things in the freezer. You can deprive them of oxygen. You can deprive them of liquids. You can put them in desert heat. Some say indefinitely, but certainly for years. Introduce some salt water and some aeration, and away they go. In fact, you don't actually need aeration to hatch these. You can hatch them in bags, sealed bags, in the dark. So the light and the aeration, it's not really a necessity. Other examples of things like cryptobiosis you see with killifish, where the lake dries up, the annual killies, we've got some Northobranchius over there, and the eggs are stored in a very similar way in slightly damp conditions for months. And whilst that is happening with killifish, not the same as Norplii, but they are actually developing in those conditions. I just think nature is incredible, you know? Actually incredible. It's a great source of protein. Yeah, I've tried to do this section, I don't know, 300 times. I have now written down some notes, and it is so that I try and stay on track. Okay, so I'm sorry if you hear some rustling, but this is going to shorten this video by about 3 hours because I won't be on tangents and rants. But a great source of protein is the most ridiculous, arbitrary statement. And yet all the YouTubers say it's a great source of protein for your fish and then hack up an old water bottle. It means nothing. Quantified, great. Well, it's better than okay. Cool. But it means nothing without context. Now, if what we are striving for is convenience, that's context. But a great source of protein? You know, cardboard has a protein value. Protein's a little bit important to me. Okay, this is me. Strict lateral raises. Right, so you can see how protein might be a little bit important. Now, cardboard has around 2% protein content. If what we're looking for is convenient, that is a great source of protein because it's there. I'm going to go and make a steak. I haven't got to go and make a protein shake. I'm going to go down to the shop to get a little protein bar. Nothing. It's there. I can just reach it for it now and eat it. And that's 2% protein. Is that a great source of protein? No, it isn't. So protein is available everywhere. It doesn't got to be meaty foods. People get this confused. It's not only meat that contains protein. Everything does. Peas contain protein. You ever wondered how these vegetarian bodybuilders do quite well in competitions? Now, the difference between a meaty protein and a vegetable-based protein is one is complete, one is incomplete. Now, that may be good depending on what you are trying to achieve. What you are trying to achieve generally with Norplii is the growth of fry. Keep that in mind. The average protein content of freshly hatched Norplii is between 30 and 70%. How is that? How is that acceptable? The variation there is so huge that it's bigger than the lowest value. If you said to a bodybuilder, eat that, there is somewhere between 30 and 70% protein in there, they'd probably knock your jaw off, because that is not nutritional information. That is, okay, there is some protein in there. How much? Just eat it. You know, that's not okay. Now, nuclei is what we're focusing on there, okay? Because the amount of protein percentage in an individual artemia changes very, very quickly, right? Trying to find specifics on different species is very, very difficult. Now, a lot of the research has been done on Franciscana and Tibetana because they are widely used in food fish industries, fisheries, because that's $1 billion business, you know? So what these guys actually pay millions of pounds for in some cases for research is worth listening to, because it actually matters to them, really does. What we was able to find out is that Franciscana is something around 50%. Tibetana is slightly more, but that again gets into the size of the individual nuclei or artemia. The number is dry weight, so we're not including water weight in that, so that is important. If it wasn't a dry weight, the number would be significantly less, because the water would be taking up a high number of the percentage of the composition of that animal. So the value while it's alive is a lot less than the 30 to 70, maybe it's 20 to 50. We don't actually know. The Tibetana will have a larger protein percentage because they have exoskeletons. As they grow, artemia grow, the protein level as a percentage will rise. Now, there's a lot of theory about that, but it does. And that is because as the animal grows, the inside, which you could sort of think of as three-dimensional, has more volume than the exoskeleton. There's not a lot of protein in the exoskeleton. So yeah, the meat to ratio skeleton increases as it grows. Now, because the Tibetana are larger, they generally have a higher protein content than the smaller Franciscana. Because, like a football, the bigger a football gets, the smaller the ratio of the covering, the leather, to the air volume gets. That's just how maths works, okay? If you're not following that, this is not what this video is about, but okay. So it doesn't, the 30 to 70% is so sort of arbitrary. I don't think you can use that as an argument to say it's a great source. Because what are you feeding yours? Are you even feeding them? Are you just relying on the egg sac? How much is in that egg sac? You don't know. That could depend on how you hatch them, the level of salinity, the level of aeration. Because the more aeration there is, the more work that nucleus had to do for the 2, 3, 4, 5 hours until you got home from work and was ready to feed it. So it's burnt up more energy. It's used more of its yolk sac. It could just be what the parents were fed on. That has a huge impact on what offspring health is like. So don't get sucked into this, they're 50% protein, because that is not a constant. It's so far from a constant, just disregard it completely. So, is it good? It depends on what the fish wants to eat. Now, feeding a largely vegetarian fish a high meat-based protein is never going to be good for digestion. It's never going to be good for the overall growth, because that's not what their body wants. Their body wants other things that come from the vegetable diet. Now, this is going back to, whilst animal or meaty-based proteins are considered a complete protein, vegetable proteins are not. Now, a complete protein, what does that mean? Any bodybuilder will tell you that a complete protein means it contains all of the 9 essential amino acids that you need for growth. They're called essential amino acids, weirdly, because you must take them in your diet. Your body cannot produce these amino acids on its own. They need to be taken externally. Well, then that's great. Artemia, they are a complete protein. Well, the nutritional profile is not balanced with Nauplii. It's not great. So because the profile isn't balanced, forget feeding too much of that to a fish that wants a more omnivorous, herbivorous diet. Feeding too much Nauplii to even a carnivorous fish can be detrimental to their health because that profile isn't balanced. An example of something that, if overfed, can cause a problem is, we saw the zebra plecos earlier in the video. Now, they are considered a fish with a diet requirement which is on the more carnivorous end. So chopped mussel, prawns, things like that, great food for them. However, those foods contain something called thiaminase. And those foods do not contain any vitamin B1. The problem occurs is thiaminase destroys vitamin B1 that already exists in the animal that's eating it. So not only does your fish not gain any vitamin B1, any vitamin B1 it had is destroyed by the food it is eating. This can lead to serious health issues. So believe me when I say feeding too much of the same thing causes problems. So whilst your Nauplii do contain high amounts of amino acids, proteins, and even good fats, the lack of vitamins and minerals can lead to some serious deficiencies in your fish. And if that's what you're relying on to grow your fry, and you're feeding nothing but that, you can see deficiencies in high numbers across your hatch. So you're going to have less viable stock at the end of it. So really the thing to take away from that is that although they are a complete protein, a good source of essential amino acids and even good fats, a balanced diet, a varied diet, especially at the fry stage, is very important. And there are lots of fry foods out there that do offer a complete profile. And no fish food manufacturer is going to offer a fry food that doesn't tick all the boxes. So look at Dr. Basilier, that's 56% protein, their baby formula. 56% protein. And it has all of the vitamins, all of the minerals, all of the essential amino acids, everything you need. Hikari First Bites, that's around 48, 50% protein, I think, by memory. And again, has a complete profile. So you can feed those exclusively and you won't have any problems. I love both of those. Dr. Basilier is my go-to, definitely, for fry. Also, there's the Sarah, name escapes me, but we do have that as well. I love that stuff. Microgram? It might not be. But yeah, so even if you are insistent on feeding Nauplii, which is no bad thing, as long as you vary it up. Now, I am well aware that there are certain fish, some very outsider examples, that will not eat anything but live food. Well, then you need to look at other means. Cyclops, maybe Moina, Daphnia moina, the smaller variety, maybe even rotifers. There are other options out there. And by the way, they have a better nutritional profile than brine shrimp. All right. Oh, how many times have you heard that? Yeah, you got to feed it within a certain window, bro. That time window closes, they're nothing but empty shells of chitin and fiber. Well, that's just not true either. Back in 2022, major players in the food fish industry, IMR and SWH, they got together and they conducted a study to find out what the nutritional profile difference between freshly hatched Nauplii and Artemia that had been grown on for 4 days was. It was huge. Absolutely huge. Everything that you would want to improve in a profile was improved. And I got the numbers for you here. Okay, so the free amino acids, which are the building blocks of muscle, in the grown on, 476 grams per kilogram. That is compared to 404 of the freshly hatched Nauplii. The protein was massively higher, 580 grams per kilo compared to 420 grams. Now, bear in mind that Both of these, IMR and SWH, they conducted their studies at their own facilities, and they both showed the same results. The glycogen was lower in the grown-on, just 10.8 versus 18. The TFAs, the total fatty acids, were also lower, 107 versus 179. So they were fed Orogreen, the ones that were grown on, they were fed Orogreen, which is made by Skretting. It's not the optimal food for feeding Artemia. Orogold would have been. So this is more relatable. This is similar results that you could get at home by feeding, what's that superfood everyone goes mad for? Spirulina, the sea algae. You're better off feeding your herbivorous fish, chlorella, by the way, which is a freshwater algae. Although I'm not going to diss sea algae too much because we have that in our food, breeders' greens. There are some good profile benefits to it, but mix them. Anyway, what that is a concentrate of algae and HUFAs. Oh, and HUFAs is just unsaturated fatty acids. So some of the grown-on Artemia were then enriched later using Biomar, which is another food fish industry sort of specialist food. And what that is a vitamin pack. So when you create a food, you always have the option to include a vitamin pack. Well, this is a vitamin pack that you sort of sit the Artemia in, and they filter feed. And although they were sat in this for about 12 hours, so long enough to have a decent feed, but it's not like they were grown up on it. Now, even though the profile of protein was better, it was negligible. It wasn't consistent. It was a small amount, but the vitamins were absolutely superb. So much so that whilst grown on for 4 days and then enriched with Biomar, the nutritional profile of the 4-day-old Artemia would rival that of Cyclops. Well, at least it's convenient. Is it? I mean, you need a container. You need air, light, water, salt, and the eggs. Mix it all together and then wait somewhere between 24 and 48 hours. Yeah, real convenient. You compare that to that Hikari First Bites packet over there, or the Sarah Microgran, or the Dr. Basilia Baby. Yeah, it's really not convenient at all, is it? Like, it's really not. So, okay, so it's expensive to buy. It's expensive to make. It's not at all convenient, but thanks to cryptobiosis, it does not expire. Especially if you keep it cold and dark, decades. You can keep this stuff almost indefinitely. So in that respect, it can be convenient. If you are not expecting to have baby fish, not expecting to hatch any fry, you can have this stuff in the freezer ready to go. And within, yes, 24 hours, if you had a heater, keep it at around 26 to 28 degrees Celsius, you can have those hatched ready to go in 24 hours. Whereas Amazon can't really deliver Hikari food faster than 24 hours. And that's, let's face it, that unless you live next door to your LFS and they stock it, that's as fast as you're ever going to get it. The biggest advantage for me, however, is that it is a live food. And this is adding some sort of credence to the claim of it being a great source of protein. The protein content isn't great, but the fact that your fish want to eat it. And it is that jerky little movement that we saw earlier on that makes it irresistible. It hones in on that instinct of the fry. Guppies, swords, focatas, rice fish, they can eat powders all day long. They don't need feeding very often. They can be fed once a day and survive. The growth rate won't be as quick as if they were fed more often, no, but they don't necessarily need a live food. But fish like Ramirez's, your dwarf cichlids, epistos, angels, they take much better to a live fish food, certainly in my experience. Artemia is a good progression from Paramecium. So when we breed the pseudomogils here, like the luminatus, the the Furcatus, even the tiny little platinum rice fish, we start them with paramecium. The species of which paramecium escapes me right now. But after a week on that, they're able to take Artemia franciscana. And then after a week on that, they're generally okay to get onto the Tibetana. And I'll try and feed that once every day or once every other day, but fed 2 to 3 times a day are the fry powders. One, because they are more convenient when you have them, and 2, it gives a complete nutritional profile, whereas, as we've discovered, Artemia actually doesn't. The sizes available, Franciscana through to Tibetana, make progression much easier. And no, I'm not saying that if you want to raise your fry, you certainly don't need Norplii Artemia. You don't have to have this. There is sort of a thing about it at the moment. It's almost like I'm waiting for the t-shirt, do you even hatch, bro? Like, you cannot be considered in any way serious about making more fish unless you are hatchet. Like, there is going to be a video very soon, not from me, but from some hillbilly, where they've bought a cement mixer.
Okay, here we go. Well, hold down, everybody. Welcome to I'm a Bag Aquatics. Where am I? What am I doing? Well, you saw in the last episode that I couldn't make enough baby brine shrimp in my bathtub to feed my 2 5-gallon tanks. So I just gone down bought myself here this cement mixer. Now I am the best fish keeper on the planet. I'm a Bag Aquatics. Keep it real.
Because it genuinely, in my opinion, is overhyped. Is it a very good food? Yes. But it's not the be-all and end-all. As we discovered, the nutritional profile is not perfect. It's not great. It's not actually that convenient unless you've got it on the boil all the time. And what's convenient about that? Nothing. And the reason that we're looking at these little guys, these are some of our 236 super whites growing out, is that it's not actually suitable for all fish. Doesn't matter that these are a fish that favors the carnivorous diet. These are no good at catching floaty little bits in the water. They need a sinking food. So if we do have, obviously we do plan for this, when we have Norplii left over from a batch, we'll freeze it down. We don't add any water to it. It's all drained of water, and then we just freeze it so that the tiny little pieces of ice, Norplii ice, are very, very dense in population. Drop that in. Now these guys can eat it. But none of these have been brought up relying on brine shrimp. So right there, that's hundreds of pounds worth of proof that you do not need. And I mean, there are going to be some species, there's going to be like somebody out there breeding pipefish, and like, oh yeah, you need it. But you really don't have to have it. Most of you watching this video do not need baby brine shrimp. You don't need Norplii. It's great. It's interesting. If you're into trying to make things efficient, try and design your own system. It is another aspect to the hobby in itself, especially trying to grow them on, keep them alive, because the mortality rate, I'll be honest with you, especially after 4 days, trying to get them to full-on adulthood, a lot of them die during that. So is that the most efficient way to do it? Maybe not. But in all honesty, I don't even really feed these guys frozen Artemia. Not even the Norplii that we've freshly frozen. They get Cyclops.
How does it compare to Cyclops?
Compare to Cyclops, though? Well, I'll tell you now, there's a reason why I feed Cyclops. And I feed Cyclops every day. Frozen Cyclops. And not only to these bottom feeders, but I make a point of feeding it every day to the egg layers. The corridors that we breed here, the orange Venezuelans, the Nanas, the Pseudomogils, Luminatus and Furcatus, the platinum and orange Madakas that we have here, the Miyukis, also the Bosemani rainbows, the threadfins. But also I feed it to the killifish, the Australes, the Nothobranchius, Rakovi there, and also the rocket panjaks. And the reason is because they are egg layers. So whilst it's a fantastic food for these guys to grow up on and develop on, for conditioning, Cyclops is insane. Now, I know there's a theory about, and to be fair, I've seen the evidence of it myself, the introduction of Nauplii to especially like dwarf cichlids, you get this sense that they know that there's food for their fry. And that can, and certainly has, I attribute some spawnings to the fact that Nauplii were introduced to the parents. But as far as Cyclops go, they have a higher natural nutritional profile than Nauplii. You need to enrich your Artemia to get them anywhere near the profile of Cyclops. They have a better essential fatty acids, DHA, than Artemia. This matters, especially in the case of conditioning, because of the long chain PUFA, LC-PUFA, long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. That's your DHA, your EPA, and ARA. And I feed Cyclops to all of the egg layers because in quality egg production, so having everything that the embryo inside needs to develop, having a good casing around the outside, doesn't matter whether they're sticky or non-sticky eggs, your egg scatterers or your egg placers, high protein, good quality and high levels of essential fatty acids, carotenoids, and vitamins are the 4 most essential things in quality egg production. And genuinely, I believe that's why we have, we're not groundbreaking success, but we have great success, especially with our Cories. And I attribute a lot of that to the fact that they're fed Cyclops daily. Yes, we feed Artemia. Yes, I hatch Nauplii quite often, but I don't think it is necessary. Yes, if you're breeding pipefish out there, yes, you probably need them. But you could also look at live rotifers. You could look at live Cyclops culturing. There are other ways, guys. So don't feel, because there is this sort of stigma about it at the moment, that if you are, I'm waiting for the t-shirt. Do you even hatch, bro? Like, really, get a life. You don't need it. It's not 100% necessary. It's not mandatory. Same as the aeration and the light when you are trying to hatch Nauplii. You don't need it. It can be done without it. It may not be as quick. It may not be as consistent, but it can be done. So if you're trying to convince your parents to let you have a way of hatching these things, don't worry, you don't need to have a light on it constantly if they're worried about a fire risk. You don't need to have it bubbling away if they're worried about power consumption and noise. It can be done without those things. Salinity, some eggs prefer salinity of 35 over 15, but 15 is generally good enough. To put that into practical terms, 1 heaped tablespoon of marine salt is what I use. It's generally good for 1 litre of water, which is good for 1 teaspoon of eggs. There are some good systems out there on the market for you to hatch with if you are looking at doing it. The Zis hatchery is not all it's cracked up to be. If you've only got 3 or 4 tanks, don't bother wasting your money on one of those. Look at alternatives. Even if it is cutting up an old drinks bottle, because the Zis hatchery is, while it is okay, you need to make your own stand for it. Even the newer one with a higher stand is useless. So you need to have somewhere to hang it or make your own stand. And it's generally marketed, because of its 2 litre capacity, it's good for large amounts. But if you just need a small amount, maybe hack up your own bottle. Or I'm a big fan of the JBL system. Have a look into the JBL system. It comes with absolutely everything you need. Air pump, stand, it's wall mountable. Even the stand, it's a sealed cone, which means it's pressurized, which means there is a release pressure, which means that you can then daisy chain several of those canisters together, which is what I've got upstairs. I have Zis, I have JBL. I've also tried doing it in 10 litre aquariums, and that works just fine. It's just collecting them is not as easy. So that's why I feed Cyclops as well. Predominantly Cyclops, to be fair. Out of, well, Cyclops and bloodworms. I'll put bloodworms in there as well. But yes, so the aim of this, wow, this has been long, huh? This is the longest it's ever taken me to film anything, but I've been really trying to put this together in some sort of format that makes sense rather than me just sitting here rambling. So hopefully we've achieved that. Hopefully you have now a better understanding of whether you want to, whether it's worth it, or if you were sitting on the fence, are you going to bother? Let me know in the comments. That'd be great. Have I inspired you to try other things? Have I inspired you to try hatching your own Norpi? It'd be great to actually get some comments on this video. This is a growing channel. No, I'm not really pushing it. It's just information. It's not fun. It's not spangly. But if you like it, subscribing would be a great boost to my morale. The fish don't care. But on that note, as always, I hope you find a reason to smile today. And more than that, I hope you find a way to make somebody else smile today. I'll see you in the next one. The average protein content of freshly